Hi, and welcome back to our video tutorial series on Adobe Lightroom. And in this lesson, we're going to kind of do a quick overview of some of the main features of the program and some of the reasons why I enjoy using Lightroom in my workflow and why I believe that everyone should be also using Lightroom. Anybody who processes or has to process a lot of images, Lightroom is the answer to very quickly apply a lot of the same settings to a large batch of photos. Something that's just not possible very easily in other programs. And it is, I believe, the most professional program out there for processing images. And if you haven't already started working with it, I encourage you to continue this series and learn about Lightroom and start using it. Okay, let's open up the program and notice a kind of give an orientation to some of the main features of the program. When you open up Lightroom, you will be brought back to the same place that you left off the last session with Lightroom. In this case, it brought me back to the same project, or catalog as Lightroom calls it. It brought me back to the same image where I left off, and working in the same tab. And that's maybe the first thing that we can take a look at is the different tabs here. We see we have 7 different groupings here. Lightroom divides up the tasks that it can perform on images into 7 different tabs here. The first one is called a library. The library tab gives you access to your complete catalog. It allows you to add extra images to your catalog. It's a good place to do your exporting, add metadata to your images, and just kind of keep your catalog organized, shall we say, in this tab. Something I might point out, you'll notice that there's a right-hand panel, a left-hand panel, and those can be turned on or off by the little triangle or arrow here on the very margin, the very edge of your program. And the same is true also with our carousel. If you're not seeing the carousel of your images, then it's probably because somebody has adjusted your little arrow here and has kind of opened it up so that you have a larger image to see as you work. But if you want your carousel back, or you want your side panels back, then remember it's the little arrow keys that allow you to do that and set your panels and carousel back. You might remember the carousel we talked about in our last tutorial. This is a place where you can get a larger view of your collection, and also remember the little slider bar here that allows you to scroll down the line and get a glimpse of your whole catalog very quickly. But moving on, let's go to our Develop tab. And here is where we can make all of our adjustments to an image. For example, as we look at this image, we see that it's a little underexposed. Well, because of the fact that we shot this image in RAW, we have a lot more latitude on how we can adjust the image after the fact. It's almost as though you can say, when you get back to your studio or back to your home, you can say, I didn't really have the best camera settings here. Let's change the camera settings now. It's just amazing what you can do with a raw image. For example, we can go to our exposure bar here and just lighten that up quite a bit without losing any data. If we were working with just a JPEG image here, and if we had shot this in JPEG, as we brought up this exposure bar, it would really start blowing out the highlights. But because we have shot in RAW here, we can do a lot more adjustment after the fact without losing information in the image. But notice if we want to get a little bit more fine-tuned, we could just bring up the midtones without affecting the lights or the dark part of the image. And so once we have the light areas of the image kind of where we want them, then we can just very specifically go in and change just the darks, just the lights, the highlights, or the midtones. And of course we can affect the temperature. If we weren't quite happy with the white balance that the camera chose, if it was on auto white balance, well, here after the fact that we can make it a little colder, a little warmer, and it's just amazing what you can do after the fact. And it helps so much if you've shot in RAW. If you're not shooting RAW, start now and don't go back, because as you begin to work with Lightroom, you will find that working with a RAW image just gives you so many more opportunities to make fine-tune adjustments without losing data. There's the opportunity to geotag your images. So if you want to take a whole group of images and say we were at Bouchard Gardens in Vancouver Island, then you can add that geotagging after the fact. Some cameras do that for you. The iPhones, for example, just do that automatically. And some of the newer cameras also have the ability in the menu settings to turn that on or off. It has kind of a little GPS built right into the camera. However, this program allows you to add the geotagging after the fact, and it just includes it into the metadata of the image itself, so that wherever that image goes up online or to stock sites, or say you're working with SmugMug or Facebook, whatever, the information of where the image was shot, this geotagging is just embedded right into the shot and will show up automatically on these different sites. Now, one thing to keep in mind about geotagging is that if you're working for some agencies that deal with children, for example, they will require you that there be no geotagging on the images, so that the location of a child cannot be identified just by looking at the image or investigating the metadata of an image. And that's important. So keep in mind, keep your client in mind and their regulations as to whether or not you use geotagging. The next tab, book, you can actually take the images here in Lightroom and design a book that can be printed. You can set up a slideshow, and there's lots of different settings that you can use to make your slideshow very elegant, and you can export that slideshow to a hard drive or thumb drive for presentation or gift to a client, a way to also take a look in a very nice way at the images that you shot. You can set it up to print. That's probably something that you'd be more likely to do in Photoshop, but it does have the ability to do that here in Lightroom. You can also set up a nice web gallery very quickly and easily here and export that to a website so that people can, your clients or family and friends can very easily go through, and if they like an individual image, click on it and be able to see a larger image of that. Okay, well, that gives you a nice brief overview of some of the main features and functions of Lightroom. Of course, the main reason why Lightroom is so valuable is because of its way to organize your shots and do bulk editing to your shots in the way of adding metadata to your images, as well as being able to bulk edit in the way of developing. For example, if we had shot a whole series of shots that were just a little bit underexposed like that, then once we got one selected, then it would just be a matter of selecting the whole group with your shift key held down. Just go down and select down the road, and then sync up with the sync button, and then all of the adjustments that you made to that one image would be automatically applied to that whole group that needed the same effect. So that's what we mean when we say bulk editing, not something that you can easily set up or do in Photoshop. Okay, so well, I think that is all I wanted to show you in this brief orientation. In our next lesson, we'll take a closer look at our Library tab and some of the main features and functions of the Library tab itself. For now, I believe that does it for our orientation to Lightroom.